Vampires, creatures of the night, fearsome predators with an insatiable thirst. Their legend has echoed through centuries, sending chills down our spines. But where did these tales originate? What sparked this enduring fascination with the undead? Join us now as we embark on a journey into the dark heart of vampire lore. The vampire myth stretches back millennia, its tendrils reaching into the earliest civilizations. Long before written word, stories of bloodthirsty spirits and demonic beings were shared around flickering fires. In ancient Mesopotamia, tales were told of the Ekimu, restless spirits that preyed on the living. Ancient Greece and Rome had their own versions of these terrifying creatures. The Strix, a nocturnal bird demon, was said to feed on the blood of unsuspecting victims. These early myths reveal a profound fear of the unknown, of death and the creatures that might lurk beyond the grave. Despite the terror they inspire, vampires hold a curious allure. They're often portrayed as elegant, powerful, and strangely seductive. This paradoxical nature, a blend of repulsion and fascination, is central to their enduring appeal. Vampires, immortal and eternally youthful, represent a tantalizing escape from the constraints of human existence. Their power over life and death, though terrifying, also holds a certain fascination, or perhaps it is the forbidden nature of their desires that draws us in. Whatever the reason, the vampire's allure is undeniable. Our journey into the vampire's dark history takes us deeper into the labyrinth of ancient tales. These stories, whispered across centuries, reveal a world teeming with monstrous beings. In ancient Assyria and Babylonia, tales of the Akaru sent shivers down the spine. These malevolent spirits, rising from the underworld, were said to prey on the living. Their victims, drained of blood and life force, would then join the ranks of the undead. These ancient cultures believed that proper burial rituals were essential to prevent the deceased from becoming Akaru. Even the great civilization of Egypt, obsessed with life after death, wasn't immune to the vampire's allure. Venture further east, and we encounter the Boban Sith from Scottish folklore. This seductive creature, appearing as a beautiful woman, would lure unsuspecting travelers to their doom. In Slavic cultures, the vampire myth took on a particularly terrifying form. The Nosferatu, a word that sends chills down the spine, was a creature of pure evil. Often depicted as bloated and grotesque, it was said to spread plague and misfortune wherever it roamed. These Slavic vampires, unlike their Western counterparts, were rarely portrayed as elegant or seductive. They were monsters in the truest sense of the word, embodiments of humanity's deepest fears. The ancient world, grappling with the unknown, developed elaborate methods to combat these creatures of the night. Garlic, with its pungent aroma, was believed to ward off evil spirits, including vampires. Sunlight, the life-giving force of day, was considered lethal to vampires. This belief, rooted in the observation that decomposition occurs more slowly in the dark, further solidified the vampire's association with the night. For those unfortunate enough to be targeted by a vampire, more drastic measures were necessary. Stakes, driven through the heart, were believed to be the most effective way to prevent a vampire from rising again. As the medieval world shivered in the shadows of superstition, the vampire legend found fertile ground. The Black Death, a plague of unimaginable devastation, ravaged Europe in the 14th century. Entire villages were decimated, leaving behind a trail of death and terror. In the wake of this tragedy, whispers of vampires intensified. One of the most notorious figures in vampire lore emerged during this era. Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, better known as Vlad the Impaler. His brutal reign, marked by unimaginable cruelty, earned him a fearsome reputation. This horrific practice, coupled with Vlad's ruthlessness, cemented his place in history as a real-life monster. While Vlad the Impaler's brutality fueled vampire legends, it was the 18th century that witnessed a full-blown vampire panic. Strange occurrences in Serbia, then part of the Habsburg Empire, gripped the public's imagination, sending waves of fear across Europe. The case of Petar Blagojevich, a peasant who died in 1725, sparked the hysteria. Soon after his death, villagers reported being visited by Blagojevich. These unsettling reports prompted local authorities to exhume Blagojevich's grave. To their horror, they claimed to find his body uncorrupted, with fresh blood on his lips and a heart that still beat faintly. Convinced they were dealing with a vampire, they drove a stake through his heart and burned his body. This incident, meticulously documented by Austrian officials, sent shockwaves through Europe. As the vampire hysteria reached its peak, some brave souls dared to challenge the supernatural explanations. Enlightenment thinkers, embracing reason and scientific inquiry, sought rational explanations for the seemingly inexplicable. Doctors, confronted with the strange symptoms attributed to vampire attacks, began to suspect a more earthly culprit. Disease rabies, a viral disease that affects the nervous system, can cause aggression, hallucinations, and a fear of water. Pellagra, a nutritional deficiency, can lead to dementia, skin lesions, and ultimately death. While scientific explanations offered a glimmer of reason, the vampire myth proved remarkably resilient. As the 19th century dawned, the vampire myth underwent a dramatic transformation. No longer confined to folklore and superstition, it found a new and powerful voice in literature. Gothic novels, with their brooding atmosphere and themes of the macabre, provided the perfect stage for the vampire's grand entrance. John Polidori's The Vampire, published in 1818, is widely regarded as the first true vampire novel. This chilling tale introduced the world to Lord Ruthven, a charismatic and predatory vampire who moved effortlessly through high society. Polidori's novel established many of the tropes that would come to define the vampire genre. But it was Bram Stoker's Dracula, published in 1897, that would truly cement the vampire's place in the literary canon. Dracula plunges readers into a world of shadows and secrets, where the line between the living and the undead blurs. The novel unfolds through a series of diary entries, letters, and telegrams, immersing readers in the unfolding horror from multiple perspectives. At the heart of the story lurks Count Dracula, a centuries-old vampire residing in a crumbling castle in Transylvania. Stoker masterfully crafts Dracula's persona, imbuing him with a chilling blend of aristocratic charm, primal savagery, and otherworldly power. Dracula was an instant success, captivating readers with its chilling atmosphere, suspenseful plot, and unforgettable characters. It spawned countless adaptations, from stage plays to films, each interpreting the vampire myth in its own unique way. Stoker's novel left an indelible mark on the vampire myth, shaping its evolution for over a century. Dracula, with his aristocratic bearing, hypnotic gaze, and insatiable thirst for blood, became the archetype for countless vampire portrayals in literature, film, and popular culture. The novel also solidified several key elements of vampire lore, including their aversion to sunlight, their ability to transform into bats, and their vulnerability to garlic, stakes, and crucifixes. But Dracula also introduced new dimensions to the vampire myth. Stoker explored themes of sexuality and desire, portraying vampires as seductive and alluring creatures. This element, though controversial at the time, added a layer of complexity and intrigue to the vampire persona. Dracula, cursed to wander the earth forever, became a tragic figure, both terrifying and strangely sympathetic. Dracula transcended the realm of literature, becoming a cultural phenomenon that continues to fascinate and inspire. The novel's themes of good versus evil, the battle between reason and superstition, and the allure of the forbidden resonated deeply with audiences, ensuring its enduring legacy. The vampire, once a figure of fear and revulsion, had been transformed into a complex and multifaceted character, capable of evoking both horror and sympathy. From the silent era to the modern blockbuster, vampires have graced the silver screen in countless incarnations. Each adaptation, while drawing inspiration from Stoker's masterpiece, has put its own unique spin on the vampire myth. The vampire myth, once confined to the shadows of folklore, had emerged as a rich and endlessly adaptable genre. The 20th century dawned, and with it, the vampire myth continued its relentless evolution. No longer confined to the Gothic castles of Transylvania, the undead began to stalk the shadowy streets of modern cities. Film, the new medium captivating audiences, provided the perfect platform for the vampire's seductive menace. F.W. Murnau's silent masterpiece, Nosferatu, unleashed a chilling new vision of the vampire in 1922. Gone was the aristocratic charm of Dracula. In its place stood Count Orlok, a grotesque and rat-like creature. Nosferatu, though an unauthorized adaptation of Dracula, left an indelible mark on vampire cinema. Meanwhile, Universal Studios embraced the Gothic allure of Dracula with their 1931 talkie starring Bela Lugosi. Lugosi's portrayal, with its hypnotic gaze and thick Hungarian accent, captivated audiences. As decades passed, the vampire continued its reign over our imaginations. Filmmakers experimented with the myth, exploring different facets of the vampire persona. Hammer films, in the 1950s and 60s, redefined the vampire for a new generation. Their films, starring Christopher Lee as Dracula, were a feast of Gothic horror, replete with lush visuals, passionate romance, and shocking violence. Vampires began to appear in other genres, adding a supernatural twist to westerns, comedies, and even blaxploitation films. This genre bending reflected the vampire's versatility as a narrative device. The vampire, once relegated to the shadows, had stepped into the spotlight, its allure as potent as ever. The late 20th century witnessed a surge in vampire fiction that pushed the boundaries of the genre. Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles, beginning with Interview with the Vampire in 1976, introduced a new breed of vampire, sensual, introspective, and grappling with the complexities of their immortal existence. Rice's vampires were not simply monsters, they were complex individuals, cursed with an unquenchable thirst, but also capable of love, loss, and profound philosophical reflection. Her novels, rich in atmosphere and psychological depth, resonated with readers, particularly young adults, who found in her vampires a reflection of their own struggles with identity and alienation. Film adaptations followed, bringing Rice's evocative world to life on the big screen. Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, as the vampires Lestat and Louis, captivated audiences with their portrayals of the immortal anti-heroes. The vampire, once a figure of pure horror, had become a vehicle for exploring themes of existentialism, morality, and the search for meaning in a world without end. As the millennium turned, the vampire continued its reign over popular culture, its image shifting and morphing to reflect the anxieties and desires of a new era. The vampire, once a creature of darkness and dread, had become a surprisingly versatile and enduring icon. From the ancient myths that whispered of bloodthirsty spirits to the modern silver screen where vampires sparkle and brood, the legend of the undead has captivated humanity for millennia. The vampire, a creature born of darkness and fear, has transcended its humble beginnings in folklore to become a cultural icon. Its fangs sunk deep into the collective imagination. We have journeyed through time, witnessing the vampire's evolution from monstrous fiend to seductive anti-hero. We've seen how this creature, a reflection of our deepest anxieties and desires, has adapted and transformed with each passing era. The vampire, once a symbol of plague and death, has come to represent our fascination with immortality, the allure of the forbidden and the seductive power of darkness. Despite the ever-shifting portrayals, one thing remains constant: the vampire's hold on our collective psyche. Whether they inspire terror, fascination, or a curious blend of both, these creatures of the night continue to haunt our stories, our dreams, and our reflections. As long as humanity grapples with the mysteries of life, death, and the darkness that lies between, the vampire will endure. Their story is our story, a tale of fear and desire, of mortality and the yearning for something beyond. Why do these creatures of the night continue to fascinate us? Perhaps it's their immortality that beckons, a tantalizing escape from our fleeting existence. Or maybe it's the forbidden allure of their desires, the primal hunger we keep hidden. The vampire's bite is a potent metaphor, a symbol of transformation and the unknown. It represents a crossing over, a blurring of life and death, good and evil. In a world of change, the vampire offers a strange comfort. Their legend, ancient and ever-evolving, reminds us that some fears and desires are timeless.